welcome to another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, Wize, and I'm very excited. Today's guest is someone leaders call when the stakes are high and the margin for error is small. Known as the CFO Whisperer, he spent nearly 30 years advising CFOs and financial executives on transformation, growth, and leadership in a world that's changing fast. He blends financial strategy and human leadership in a way that's practical, clear, and powerful. So if you're ready to talk about leadership that actually works in the real world, not just the boardroom slide deck, lock in, let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Kenneth Merritt.
Thank you. Thanks for
Oh,
having
man.
me.
Pleasure's
Excited to
all
be
mine.
here.
Well, the connection happened because of a mutual friend of ours. And shout out to Angela Lewis. She made this connection happen. I'm excited to have you on the show, man. Thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, I echo the shout out to her. She's amazing, right? And talking to her, I've been looking forward to this ever since.
Awesome. So what was the moment in your career when you realized the traditional leadership playbook wasn't enough anymore?
Wow. Um, I don't know if there was one thing. It probably was multiple things. And three things jump into my head, right? I think early in my career, and I was telling this story recently. Early in my career, I was in an organization. I thought, and I started my career in the 90s. So I thought I'd be there for 25, 30 years. And within the first few weeks of being there, I watched people kind of lose their job, get laid off, right? And I think that was the first wake up call, right? I think, some years later, I saw um, companies doing mergers and acquisitions, and that forced to ask the question of who was going to lead post transaction, right? And then over time, I've seen um, different economic conditions, high growth, recessions, all those things, and so I think after this is 30, I've been at this 30 years. I think after the first 15 or 20, I started learning that leadership is a dynamic thing. And if you're going to be successful at it, you have to be agile. You have to uh, understand the moment you're in. And most importantly, you got to meet that moment at whatever cost uh, you're facing, because times change so fast uh, as a leader.
You've advised CFOs across multiple industries. What were the early lessons that shaped your leadership philosophy in working in within so many industries?
Yeah. Well, I can't. A couple of things. One, you come to learn that when you're working across industries, that there are things that are not industry centric, right? That you need to understand the macroeconomic things, whether we're in a growth or a recession, right? Whether we're in high unemployment or low employment. So you need to learn those. You understand those things. You need to understand um, people, right? And whether as a leader you have the right people around you, and those kind of things, right? Um, and then you need to understand, how your uh, organization makes money, right? No matter what the industry is, how do you make money? Is it one way, or are there multiple ways? So I think all those things are what I'd say industry agnostic, right? But then on the other side, you click all of those down, you start to learn that industries matter, right? Take each one in a macroeconomic sense. Some businesses, right? Let's take one for example. If you're in banking, right, in economic times of high interest rates and inflation, things are different. If you're in trash collecting, right, that the macroeconomic situation is not as impactful, right? People, I think in high growth, in good scenarios, you probably can get away with not being a great leader, so to speak, right? It's not the case um, when things get, tight. And so I think over time, I've learned that, there's certain things that are threads that cut across industries. Then in many ways, there are things that are idiosyncratic to the industry. There are things that even within it might on the surface seem like they're the same. They can be very different. No scenarios are the same. So I've learned over time that you got to sort this out and be a leader. Because in my world, when I'm talking to CFOs and helping them navigate, the first thing I always say is you need to understand your environment, your strategy, what's required of your company, so that you can step into the moment and lead.
Many leaders chase performance at the cost of people. When did trust and relationship building become central to your work?
Yeah, I kind of believe trust and leadership. I think the more senior you get, the more you um, come to appreciate those things. I think when you're early in your career, right? And for me, when I was coming along, I thought that working hard, that building my kind of core skill set, that understanding, technology and tools and all those things were the capabilities that I needed to advance, right? And in many ways, um, that's what I did with my clients. That's where I helped them as I kind of grew as a leader myself. But once I got to a certain level, I come to know that being an advisor, and an advisor as I am to like CFOs and other clients around, or if you're working in the company, you're an advisor to your boss and to your colleagues and to your customers and everything, that those things start with the word trust, right? Those things start with leadership. They're relationship based capabilities. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how much you know. If people don't kind of buy it, if they don't know you, if they don't trust you, then you can't lead, right? And so I think it's one of those things that sometimes it takes us a while to process. And so when I try to do that with all my clients, all my relationships in business and beyond. And then also I advise all my folks who listen to me, and I counsel and coach, that focus more on relationships, because that will get you trust and leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's a mistake you made early in your leadership journey that shaped how you lead today? What was something you learned, a mistake you learned from?
Yeah, I kind of believe, and it's a little bit tied to the what I just talked about.
Yeah.
Um, I believed that if you had the right answer to a scenario, that you would that everything be good, right? And so you can take on the tough conversations, you can take on the biggest questions if you think you had the macro answer, right? So in other words, um, you know, to make the example a little more clear, um, we're thinking about companies thinking about making a sale, right? Getting out of a certain business, selling a business unit, right?
Okay.
And um, in this case, they were like, we set the we believe we got a good price. We believe it's the right time, and I advised them through all of this. I think the blind spot I had at that moment was, yeah, it didn't matter whether that on paper and philosophically made sense. You still got to bring people along. You still got to be a leader and help folks understand where your head is, why you're doing what it is. Some of them are going to buy it from the start. Others you're going to have to sell it to them. And that finesse, that set of skills, right, comes with experience, right? Not everyone has it, certainly. I think as you grow as a leader, you learn to appreciate it. And so for me, early in my career, I think the blind spot I had was, if the answer makes macro sense, then let's just roll with it. No, you got to have, if you're going to lead, you got to have people willing to follow.
Yeah, I agree. So if you had to describe your leadership identity in one sentence, what is it and why?
Yeah, my leadership identity is, I advance like leadership gravitas, right? And what I mean by that is, um, sometimes we are labeled a leader,
Mhm.
and sometimes we have the remit, the responsibilities to lead, and maybe that looks like this, but our capabilities are down here, right? And so what I believe is, you got to help bring the capabilities up to the remit that you have, right? There's other times when your um, your ability to lead is up here and your confidence is down here. How do we pick your confidence up, right? And so for me, what I believe is, you got to understand the scenario. You got to think about where you are. You got to understand expectations of you, and then um, lead the way. And that's why I use the word gravitas, right? Gravitas is when those things, when it- your what your company needs, what your team needs, the expectations those have of you, and when and your capabilities for that moment. Now you've got the gravitas to go be a leader, and that's what I like to do.
So you've talked about future proofing leadership in an AI driven world.
Mhm.
Where are most executives behind the curve? Because I know for me in podcasting, right, it's really helped shift stuff for me as far as being able to structure my podcast using AI and using it as the tool, and then just basically just diving into learning about AI and wanting to use it to help improve my system here in the podcast and with everything else I'm doing. So
Yep. I think there's a number of things with AI, right? And I think the biggest of uh, it is that I think the um, AI providers, right, and company decision makers and business doers are still trying to sync up their connection, right? And I say it this way. Um, I think a lot of us have, smartphones, whether it's
mhm,
iPhone or the Google phones, and our phones have, AI capabilities, right? And if you're, and I'll talk Apple because that's the one I have, right? And Apple comes out with their Apple Intelligence, right? And then, I made the decision to kind of buy it. Yet at the end of the day, I'm not so sure that I understand all the things I can do with it, right? And I think that's a microcosm of what's happening on a much more larger basis. And so what I believe is, we all got to do a little bit better job, right, as business leaders, of one, for those who are promoting AI because that's your business or you believe in it, make it real. Make it real to everybody who you're trying to sell, right? If you're a decision maker, ask the tough questions, and ask the tough questions to both those who are providing AI and those who actually are the ones who use it, right, within your orgs. And then lastly, if you're a member of the team and are used to doing things a certain way, you should lean in and ask yourself, how can I use AI to improve on what I'm doing? Right. And I think that triangle of stakeholders in and around this world called AI is still finding equilibrium, right? Finding a way to everybody get on the same page. It'll happen. I think we take a little step further every day, but I think the reason it's been slow is all three parties, still trying to figure out their part in the equation.
So, what does transformational leadership look like in practical everyday behavior?
Yeah, transformational leadership looks like a few things. One, it is accepting that the fact that you've got to change, right? I mean, just the nature of the word transformation means something is going to be different, right? And so I see a lot of leaders who, even think about making things better on an incremental basis. Well, if you're a transformational leader, it's not incremental; it's step change. It's significant change. So I think it's one. I think number two is understanding what the outcome should be, needs to be, or you know ought to be. So having a targeted outcome and model for what the transformation is so important, right? And then thirdly, surrounding yourselves by the things you need, right? Great people, right? The right tools, right? Data and information, work, workflow, and doing things differently. I think as a transformational leader, you gotta set the stage and drive those two things. One, acknowledging the change. Two, define the outcome and the targets. And three, put the enablers around people, process, technology, data, so you can get there.
So so you emphasize authentic relationships as growth catalysts. What does that look like in finance, where trust is often guarded?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? And I think um, the best way to think about authentic relationships is being able to have three types of conversations. One, and I think this is the one is generally easy for people who are in finance, right? Who are being partners. One, it's um, telling the story of performance that uh, your business partners are looking for, right? That you have good times, bad times, just in many ways, how are we doing? Reporting and storytelling. So that's number one in doing it. Number two, it is being able directly and candidly and honestly tell uh, the things that need to be said, right? And that is being transparent, being direct, being honest about like um, missed numbers or underperformance or even risk and upsides of things, right? Just having that conversation in a way that everyone can get. But I often think the third one is the one that I it may sound a little foreign to some people, but is the one that I think is the difference maker. Uh, a targeted outcome that you seek. So, and what I mean by that is, just everyday relationship building, right? Too many times I see finance folks and other leaders only interacting with the business on the numbers, the performance, etc. Well, if you do that, you don't ever build really strong interpersonal relationships, right? Which is just asking a person how they're doing, right? Just stopping by and learning, asking them a little bit about the business, all right, about themselves, about their day, and sharing, and I think it's those things that often bridge the gap, right? That make you a better partner from a business perspective. And so having the three types of discussions, the one, the telling the story, the two, telling tough news when you need to, but three, just having everyday personal relationships are the difference in being a great partner and advising uh, as you need.
So what challenges do you see hitting finance and executive leadership hardest over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's a great question. The issue that I think that finance has um, to take on first and foremost is being an agile enough team to navigate the dynamic times we're in, right? Um, and I say it that way because in my 30 plus years of business, things have never changed as significantly and as fast as they do now, right? Um, in a matter of a couple of years, you can go from you know a pandemic and business slow to growth and to inflation to slowing growth to tariffs, to um, declining economy, right? All those things happen in 5 years, right? Since 2020. And so as a finance leader, how do you build a team? How do you build capabilities that allow you to navigate that, right? Such that that you have a group around you to handle and meet the moments that you're in, right? Because from year to year, from period to period, those are just the macro conditions that I described. We haven't talked about whether or not your business is in um, a more competitive way, or if M&A is on the table, or you change leaders at the top or within an org. There's so many things that make our day-to-day lives as CFOs and finance um, challenging. And so having a agile team for the dynamic times is what is the biggest challenge for the finance function, I think, for the next really 3 to 5 years.
So how, all right. So how do you personally stay grounded and resilient in such a high pressure environment?
Yeah, it's I think there's two things. I think one, um, you got to be wired to uh, with the energy that you need to kind of keep up with it all, right? And so for me, I try to um, keep my own physical health, right, and mindset in the right place. And I love the title "Stuck in My Mind." Right, stuck in my mind constantly is that you got to be at your sharpest,
Hmm.
right? You got to have the energy, you got to have the intellectual um, interest to kind of go do it right on a constant basis. So I think that's one. Number two, and my advice I'd have to any and everyone listening is, to the extent you can um, challenge yourself to learn and think about things every day, right? The better you'll be, right? I think we get in trouble when we when we lock our minds on a certain framing, right? As opposed to seeing the data, the information, listening to people, podcasts, reading, interviewing, all those kind of things just help you learn a little bit every day. And so, to the extent you keep your physical uh, capabilities in the right place, and then mentally you dive into the topic on an ongoing basis, I don't think you have any choice then but to remain aware and ready for all the changes that you'll face.
I don't, and me personally, health was one of, like, I've always, since the podcast and everything, I've loved doing the podcast because I've learned so much and I've grown so much in the 5 years that I've been doing the podcast.
Mhm.
But it was this year where I had surgery, and I'm down 125 pounds right now. And
Nice.
so it was this year where, and it was also this year where I decided that I was gonna improve my relationship with God. That it was something that me personally I wanted
Amen.
to to really start just improve that relationship. And since then, things have been so amazing. Like the connections I've been making, the relationships I've been building, and it's all been coming into place since the beginning of the year, since I started doing the things that I needed to do to get my life in order. And so I'm blessed to be able to do this and have these conversations and get to meet someone like yourself where you have 30 years of experience and you have a wealth of knowledge to share with people. And I'm willing, and I'm building a platform where I want people to hear these stories and hear and get to know people like yourself to see, hey, especially people of color, like they need to see that we can get stuff accomplished. And so it's important for us to build, to have platforms like this and to have these conversations.
Yeah, I love that you went there, right? Because in my coaching and advising with leaders, right, and I work with obviously CFOs as we talked about, but I work with other leaders too. Um, I always, you know, talk to them about their health, their family, and all those kind of things, right? Because I don't believe you can ever achieve your best self in business if you don't achieve your best self in life, right? And so in well-being is a number of things, and you mentioned spirituality, and that's so important, right? Physical, right? Mental, now all those kind of things, and you need family health, right? You need all those kind of things to be um, positive influences to you such that they don't limit your time and ability to process what you need to do when you're quote unquote working, right? You're one person, and yes, you can have different parts of you that you have to, you know, um, put in different parts, right? And for us, you know, as people of color, we all know about code switching, right, and
Mhm.
those things. But the more you can align those things, the better off you are in in raising your chances of being successful. And so I'm a big proponent, big believer of get all those other things right, because then you become right, and now you can do right and contribute more to right.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. So if someone listening wants to grow into executive leadership, where should they start?
Yeah, I think, and I talked a little bit about my own journey of learning. Right, I think that um, being getting to an executive is hard. It takes time. It takes knowledge. It takes skill. It all of those things contribute to your performance, right? And so, being an executive is always going to be performance based. And so, I think the first thing you've got to do is make sure that you are meeting all the performance cues you have, right? I actually think things tend to fall apart a little bit for folks who are struggling is once they kind of got into the executive ranks, they start flexing muscles, they start exercising, you know, capabilities that they haven't mastered yet, right? And instead of having a continuous improvement or continuous learning or a ongoing development plan for them or their you know superiors, you know, like their boss and others around them, you know, the board, CEO, CFO have for them, you know, they kind of flounder in the fact that I'm here and look at all the things I did in the past. Well, being an executive is a dynamic, continuous thing. You should be learning all the time. You should be honing your skills every time, all the time. And you know, just as you and I were talking about health, right? And for me, I kind of love being in the gym and working out. I kind of feel like every day, you know, I'm exercising muscles to get a little bit stronger, a little bit better. It's the same thing as an executive. You should be looking to get stronger and better every day, right? Time will tell. Skills, your continuous learning, the conversations you're in, the things you see, you'll sharpen your executive presence, skills. The word gravitas again, um, because it just doesn't happen overnight. It's a development cycle, and if you can commit to that, you'll get there.
And actually, it's with anything. If you like, I'm constantly like, since starting the podcast, just been growing and learning, and I've launched the internet radio station. I've launched a publishing company. I've launched a production company. I helped my nephew publish his book. I helped we published we helped this young lady this past year publish her first children's book, and all these things. And it's like, 'cause I just wanted to just start learning. I was seeing people do things like my nephew had published a book, and the money he spent on publishing that book was a pretty penny. And I was like, man, let me figure this out so that we don't have to pay anyone else to publish the next book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I did. I learned
Nice.
how to format books. I learned how to what websites I could KDP, self-publish, everything. ISB numbers, barcodes. I've just dove into learning what was necessary for us to go and self-publish our own books. And we've done it. And so it's just me wanting, when I gravitate to something and I want to learn it, I dive into it and I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna stop until kind of like perfected it or taught, just diving into just wanting to learn more and more.
And if you think about that, as you play it out, right? The next time or the time after you become more executive at it, right? Because you've mastered it as a skill and you're ready to lead.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the legacy you're building with Merritt Advisory Group?
So it's a couple things, right? But one, I've got family members like my son's a big part of Merit Advisory, and we're proud about that. But most importantly, the legacy that we are most proud of is that our goal is to be uh, value creators and advisors to our friends and families and folks that we work with. You know what I mean? So the legacy we want to leave is we partner with you on the other side. You're better, right? Whether it's our organizational strategy work that now you have an organization, a company, a function like finance or something that's stronger than it was before our partnership, or as a leader, right? That you have grown as the type of executive that you want to be because we partner with you through our leadership advisory practice. And so there's the legacy that we have for ourselves, and every one of us should have those kind of things, right? It's part of your own happiness, your own development. But the legacy that's most important for Merit Advisory is that we leave our clients who are friends, family, and folks that we like partner with in a better place than before we started our partnership.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's dope. We've come to the part of the show where now you get the solo screen and you get to plug away, let everybody know where they can find you, websites, everything.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for tuning in, and the opportunity to be here stuck on my mind is great. I love the title. I love what we're about, and so it's been an honor to be here. You can find me at merit-advisory.com, right? Also on LinkedIn, my name is Kenneth Merritt. You can find me there. Establish a relationship. Uh, let's chat and get to know each other, And if there's a way that I can ever help, I'm more than happy to, as is Merritt Advisory. So we thank you, and we'll look forward to crossing paths as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a guest, man. I really appreciate it. Don't leave just yet. Let me close out the show and we'll chat a little bit off there. But thank you so much, man. This was dope, man. I really appreciate your time and you actually you stopping by and dropping some great stuff, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Another great episode is in the books. If today's conversation challenged you or gave you something to think about, don't let it fade. Connect with Kenneth Merritt, especially if you're a leader navigating growth, complexity, or change. You can learn more and you can reach him directly. And if this episode hit home, share it with someone who's leading, building, or trying to grow without burning out. We live together. So, you know, your boy Wize does it. Peace out.